Well, for those of you who already have your 2023 calendars handy, go ahead and block off that entire last week of June. That's because we have the NHL Awards and the NHL Draft coming to Nashville. The Predators are hosting both in the same week. We're going to talk about the impact, what that means for Nashville, and some things we want to see from the NHL when they come back to the Music City. We're talking about that today on the Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Predators your first listen of the day every single day. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer and editor at ontheforecheck.com, and I have a partner in crime.
You do. I am Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer at ontheforecheck.com.
Also, want to mention today's show brought to you by our friends at Bet Online. Bet Online has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online, where the game starts. And NHL offseason. You go into this big lull where there's not a lot of news, not a lot of signings or everything. And then just out of nowhere, you get what we had for like the hour span yesterday, where every news story seems to happen at once. We had the draft and we had the NHL Awards coming to Nashville at the same time. Nazem Kadri was finishing up signing with the Calgary Flames, which I think surprised a lot of people because everybody was like, "Oh, he's definitely going to the Islanders." We had Sean Monahan and a first-round pick getting traded to Montreal to take care of that whole situation.
Yeah.
It felt good. It felt like we were back in the glorious pre-draft days where everybody was getting signed or traded, or somebody might move from Calgary to Columbus for no reason.
Yeah, this was good. It's the 5 emojis from the Nashville Predators social media team and Nazem Kadri going somewhere else besides the Islanders just made for like the most fun hour of hockey, like stewing in speculation. And I loved it because there were so many people that were like so sure, because the Predators sort of said, hey, we were going to announce something at 1:00. And the timing of it all, everybody's like, oh, it's clearly we're getting Monahan. Clearly we're getting And then some people were like,
I don't know why he would be excited about that.
I mean, at this point, I think people are like, just something. And then we had some people that are like, hey, I mean, we've waited a long time. Maybe it's Phil Kessel Day. Yeah. It was not Phil Kessel Day, which we need to talk about why it has not been Phil Kessel Day yet. Some people thought maybe we were, the Preds were announcing a reverse retro jersey. Like the speculation for that hour was so much fun. Yeah. So much fun.
Yeah, the player speculation part of that was like very weird because everybody's like, oh, clearly we're getting Sean Monahan.
Oh,
and everybody's like, oh, well, clearly like they're getting Phil Kessel, or there's a trade. And just like, that's what's throwing me off. And then there's, one site that's like, oh, the Preds are getting a Winter Classic next year, even though the Winter Classic has already been announced.
Yeah.
So it's like, but it was wild because it's just like, guys, like clearly, like, did you know, like right off the bat, like I was like, not to toot my own horn or be a douche or anything like that, but I like when that first came out of it, I was like, oh, it's the draft. Like,
no.
What did anybody else feel that right off the bat?
No, okay. I did not. As a matter of fact, you saved my sanity because I was like, oh, we're getting Sean Monahan. And then I was like, no. And I really did. Like, I can't give up on the Phil Kessel thing. Like, I'm still on the Phil Kessel pedal tavern. And so I had my hopes up, but the one that threw me was the baby emoji. And that's when I came to you and I'm like, what is happening? And you gave me peace. You're like, oh, hey, come on. It's the NFL or the NHL draft. And I was like, well, of course it is. And then, I was able to regroup. But so kudos to you because I'm fully here to admit I was one of those that was like feasting on social media about what could it be? Is it Phil Kessel? Is it finally Phil Kessel? Friends, it is not finally Phil Kessel.
Phil Kessel's still out there.
Any
There's
day
still
now.
a chance.
Any day now.
I don't know if they're going to have the cap space for him, but he's still out there hanging out somewhere, eating his hot dogs. Let's talk about like what the Predators did announce, which is the NHL Draft, which we had kind of heard for a couple of months now that the NHL was leaning Nashville. They just kind of wanted to get one or two things straightened out with like hotel rooms, logistics, that kind of thing. But the one that was kind of the surprise is the NHL Awards, and this is the first year since 2006 that they've been in the same city. It seems like the NHL is going back to the format where it's like they have them at the end of the year instead of kind of some random point in the middle of the Stanley Cup Finals.
Yeah,
and then the draft 2 days later. So it seems like they're kind of making this like back to being sort of a week-long event. I'd be very curious to know if that's going to be something of a thing going forward for the NHL. Like wherever the draft is, like maybe have like the NHL Awards, the day before, like a couple days before. Everybody's going to be in town anyway.
Right.
Maybe make it more of kind of like a week-long event. So I'd be curious to know like if that's going to be a thing for the NHL moving forward. And if that is the deal, you couldn't pick a better place than Nashville.
Yes, because unbiasedly saying you are right.
Yeah, like I mean, come on, everybody wants to come to the It City, except the people who live in the It City. They would like to stay as far away from Broadway that week as possible.
That is a fact.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean the players when you talk to them, obviously like Nashville is one of their favorite cities to come to. There's a lot of celebrities that of course would gladly spend some time in Music City doing whatever, to come to the NHL Awards and host and all that. Fans I'm sure would love to travel this week, to do a double. I mean, me and my dad are already talking about doing like the double dip, like coming into town, doing the awards on Monday, first round on Wednesday. There's probably a lot of hockey fans that are gonna want to do the same thing. So yeah, I mean, this is definitely an event, and it's going to be a party, and it's kind of just speaks to Nashville's prowess of being able to host these big sporting events.
Well, when you look back at the NFL draft that was here a couple of years ago, it was huge. And while the NHL draft is just a little bit different in the way that it's executed and the way that it's going to look, it's very clear that Nashville knows how to throw a big party like that. And I love them packaging these events together, and I love them packaging them after the Stanley Cup Finals. And I agree with you. I think this is the NHL doing the right thing and making this way more fun, because you now can have Stanley Cup winners drinking and eating and having a great old time in Nashville at the awards show. Whereas before, I mean, the guys who were there this past year that were still in the Stanley Cup Finals, I mean, they're still trying to stay in game mode and stuff. It's not as appealing. But I love this, and I think Nashville is going to hit it out of the park. Like, this is going to be amazing for the NHL, and it's going to be amazing for Nashville Predators.
For sure. More I want to talk about on this, including maybe how the Winter Classic has tied into some of this and kind of given the NHL a little bit push to do more stuff like this in the Music City. First, though, I want to remind everybody today's show brought to you by our friends at betonline.net. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your betting needs. You can find all of your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. They have stuff on every single league going on right now: Major League Baseball, golf, WNBA. They've got everything you need to know to gear up for the NFL. Plenty of offseason stuff on NBA, NHL, also combat sports and esports, tennis, soccer. Anything you can think of, BetOnline has you covered. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports wagering information. From live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts, they have you covered. So head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening right now. BetOnline, where the game starts. Yeah, you mentioned the NFL draft, Anne, and that kind of leads me into kind of the next point about the Music City is, it just seems like the more Nashville gets in terms of like hosting big events, the more they get.
Yes.
It's like, I remember, you and I both kind of remember a time when it's just like nothing happened in Nashville. Bands, like big world tours didn't stop by, outside of, the country shows, obviously.
Right.
But, all like kind of like the sporting events skipped it, and then all of a sudden, the SEC tournament started coming here. That was a success.
Yeah.
And then, the Nashville hosted a couple of NCAA tournament, and then that was a success. So they hosted the women's Final Four. And then they hosted the NHL All-Star Game, and that was a big success, and everybody liked coming here. So they hosted the NFL Draft, and then they hosted SummerSlam this year. And there's all these like big events coming, and it's just kind of, I think they're getting put on the map in terms of being a destination where you would want to host an event because everybody would want to go to Nashville for a week. But also how well the city has kind of accept these events. Like there's a new hotel somewhere downtown every single week at this point. There's plenty of space. There's plenty of new restaurants that pop up and do gangbusters. The city in terms of logistics handles all these well. And, now that you're having like two big hockey events in a week, after you just had the Stadium Series, no less.
Yes.
It kind of makes you think, like, is Nashville going to be like sort of the next, like Vegas Rose Bowl kind of place where it's just like, oh, is there a big event that's going to happen? Then Nashville needs to be like one of the top 5 places considered.
Well, and I think Nashville has really done such a great job specifically with the NHL. Of course, like you mentioned, they've been involved in all sorts of different events, big events like that. But when you look at what they have done with NHL events, you go back to the All-Star Game. That was a huge hit. Like it was a huge hit for the players who came and their families and for the people from out of town who came. But it also generated a lot of buzz, I think, for people in Nashville because there was so much to do and to get involved in. And then you mentioned the Stadium Series game. And that, I will say that the Stadium Series game was one of my favorite hockey experiences just as a fan.
Oh, same.
So much fun and so much buzz. That stadium was packed. And you talk to even, if you hear some of the Tampa Bay Lightning players talk about it, even for them, it was just a really amazing experience. And I think that Nashville has done such a great job of just building this reputation in the NHL of being a really cool hockey town. I talked to my parents yesterday. We were talking about this, and they live up in northwestern Pennsylvania. And they were saying that they had run into through a meeting and such, a man who used to work for the Pittsburgh Penguins in ticketing. And so they were talking about, hockey and yada, yada. And he said he was down here in 2017 for Game 6, which we don't have to talk about the specifics of that. And my mom, God love her, shut him down on that. But he was saying, even then, he said, I had no idea how amazing of a hockey town Nashville was. He said, I'd never been there. I got tickets. I got to go to this Game 6. And he said, setting aside, I was for the opposite team. It was the best town to be in. It was the best arena vibe he had ever been around. And he loved it. And I think Nashville is very steadily building that reputation in with the NHL and with the players. And honestly, I look at it and I think, Nashville is doing such a great job with the NHL that I think that, you hear when you're talking about big players being traded, you hear them say, oh, well, I don't know if they want to go to that market. People talked about Johnny Gaudreau going to Columbus. Do you really want to go to that hockey market? I think Nashville's erasing that narrative completely by the way they've, kind of promoted and dealt with and handled all of these NHL events. So
besides Matthew Tkachuk, I guess.
Well, yeah, okay. Besides Matthew Tkachuk, he just didn't know any better. He just didn't know any better. But I really feel like this is so great for the NHL. It's so great for Nashville, but I also love what it is doing for the Nashville Predators organization, because you know what? People have doubted Nashville as a hockey town for a long time. 2017 really cleared some of that up, but it's like, look, folks, we're not joking. Like 2017 wasn't like we scraped together a fun party.
Yeah.
It's just that great here.
Yeah. No, and everybody loves it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in terms of, you know, media, players, teams, fans,
Mm-hmm.
you know, this is kind of a destination city.
Yeah.
And it's gonna excuse me, it's gonna be kind of interesting to see like what else Nashville gets. Obviously the big stadium plan comes together. There's probably
Yes.
going to be a Super Bowl.
Yes, I think that's the last piece to make it a Super Bowl destination. Yep.
Yeah. Let's have some fun, shall we? Let's talk about some ideas, some things that we would like to see in the NHL Awards. Because remember, not too long ago, you and I did a show about the NHL Awards where we were like, wow, this is hot garbage. Yeah. So now that our name's attached to it, like let's have some fun, shall we? Like let's throw some ideas. Let's make the NHL Awards badass.
Oh, 100%. And if there is a city that is capable of making it badass, it would be Nashville. And if there are party planners who can wrangle that together, it is you and me. You go first.
Oh, yeah. All right. So here's the interesting thing. When I wrote this article for On the Forecheck, I mentioned it. The press release said the draft is going to be at Bridgestone Arena.
Yes.
They didn't specify where the NHL Awards were.
Come on.
So I don't know if they're going to do like something cool. Like, I mean, maybe like go to the Skirmerhorn next door or something like that. But how about like on the banks of the Cumberland River right there, like right on the end? Like there's like you're almost like the draft setup. You have your stage, you know, although who knows if the players are going to want to sit outside in Nashville summer in their suits. But wouldn't that be just like a cool backdrop? You know, you're like on stage and, you know, you bring out the winners and stuff like that. Maybe have like a little green room in the back. I think that'd be fun, like to kind of incorporate like Lower Broadway itself into the show.
Yes. No, I agree. I love that. And I also think having it like that with the stage set up outside, and again, the heat is a factor, but you know, whatever. I think it would bring in such great energy from a crowd. Like you would bring a crowd that would pack, you know, Lower Broadway. And I think the energy there would be so great compared to like if you had it in a place that's a little bit more formal. Like I think it would be so fun. I thought about the Ryman. I'm like, wouldn't it be cool if they had it at the Ryman? Like just, you know.
Now that would be a way to incorporate some of like the Nashville charm into it.
Yeah, like I'm like, do it at the Ryman.
You know what I would absolutely love to see?
What's that?
Is if you make this event. So remember how the Seattle Kraken did their expansion draft?
It was
like
amazing.
Different scenes from the city and stuff like that.
It was amazing. Yes.
Yeah, like instead of just bringing up like people reading a script on the prompter, like imagine like Marshawn Lynch jumping out of a pedal tavern and being like, yeah, that boy Cale Makar, Norris Trophy.
You know what? I think that would be so cool. And there are so many just quintessentially Nashville things, like have somebody filmed at the Parthenon.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like somebody at the top of the BAP building. Come on now.
Well, that's the thing. Is like everybody thinks of Nashville and we think of like Lower Broad and like honky tonks and like all this big like party stuff. Nashville's got so many beautiful parts. Like, like you mentioned, do something at Centennial Park, like in front of the Parthenon. That's like one of the coolest buildings. I was just in Greece for 2 weeks and somehow they have the OG Parthenon, but everybody there knew about the Nashville Parthenon.
Yeah.
Like I brought it up. So it's like, but just like stuff like that, go down to like Franklin, like go on the Franklin Square and do like, people announcing it there.
Or the
Like,
Gallatin Square. I'm just saying.
yeah, there we go. Like, yeah, but there's like so many like cool places
Yes.
around town. Like go on like the Natchez Trace when like all all like the pretty scenery and stuff
Mm-hmm.
are. Hell, go to Loveless Cafe and have like in biscuit form, like a drawing
Come
of
on.
Connor McDavid when you announce the Hart. Be like,
Out
and the
of
winner is
biscuits.
Connor McDavid.
I
Um,
love it.
but wouldn't that just be like a cool way? It's not the same like boring droning on thing where it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, here's like, a presenter and
Mm-hmm.
they don't know who any of these players are, but they're gonna read off who won the Lady Bing,
Yes.
followed by some sketch where no NHL player laughs at because NHL players don't have personality. And then 4 more hours of nothing, followed by the next award. Like, switch it up a little bit. Like,
Yes.
especially make like hockey fans be like, ooh, like, what's the next thing gonna be? Because I remember that about the expansion draft. I was
Oh,
like, what?
100%.
It's like, what are they gonna do next?
Yes. No, I 100% agree with you. I think this is such a great opportunity. I also think this conversation touches on one of the hitches in the giddy up that the NHL and that Nashville have to be careful about when it comes to hosting this. And I want to touch on that real quick, but first, want to thank everyone for making Locked On Predators your first listen every day. If you are still hungry for more hockey talk, make Locked On NHL your second listen of the day. Locked On Experts give you a daily 30-minute podcast on all the things NHL all year long. So if you want to know more about the Nazem Kadri move, they're your people. You can stay up to date on everything in the hockey world. Locked On NHL, your daily 30-minute NHL podcast. So I want to touch on that real quick because I think you hit on something that is going to be so key for Nashville as they prepare for this. And that is, don't make this the commercial Nashville thing. Not everything has to be boots and hats. And I worry, that's the one thing I worry about when they announced it. That's the one thing that I think Nashville has to be careful of. Like you said, we have, downtown Franklin, we have all these amazing things. Don't make this pedal taverns and Kid Rock.
Yeah.
Like let's be really let's show off some of the other thing because Nashville draws a ton of pedal tavern, Kid Rock, Bachelorette, Woo Girl. Like that's kind of the genre, but there's so much more here. And I think this is such a great chance to show off some of the other aspects of Nashville. And I also think let's incorporate some other people. Like you were talking Marshawn Lynch. Can I get Taylor Lewan and a hollowed out dead catfish for $800?
Yeah,
like who does not want to? I mean, I am the person who doesn't want to see that, but there's some really amazing.
I was gonna say
Nashville
you
people.
railed on that earlier this year when that got brought
Nasty
up.
salmonella. I mean, I will not watch, but some people will be fascinated. Garth Brooks. I mean, now he is country music, but he and Trisha Yearwood love hockey. There are so many ways that this can be bigger than Lower Broad and hockey. And let's, just that was my one fear as I heard this. Like, can we please elevate this a little bit?
And when we were talking about the stadium series, that was you and me's like biggest complaint, where it's like it seems like they lean too heavily into country music. Like there was like the bar band performing, like the I like it, I love it, like after every goal instead of just doing the goal song, and like everything was country. Like the intro was country, and I get it. It's like Nashville's country music capital of the world. I get it, but like there's so much more to it than just like you said, like boots and hats. Like Nashville's got so much personality, and I feel like that what you said kind of echoes what a lot of locals feel, because we're like, okay, enough with the honky tonks, enough with like the like dudes in bolo ties and like the girls in cowboy boots, like partying everywhere. Like come to like Wedgwood, like come to East Nashville, like explore Bellevue, like go take a tour around Belmead. Like there's so much personality. There's so much personality in like neighborhoods and all these like local places and so much flavor around Nashville that, you know, I feel like when you have a big event like this and it's just country,
Yes.
that's when it kind of gets a little bit like old. And then I feel like, you know, turns off a lot of locals. I mean, we talked about it like locals are like, avoid lower broad like the plague. We joked about that earlier.
Yeah.
But that's one of the reasons why. So,
yes.
You know, like I feel like, you know, if you want to do the city of Nashville justice, then maybe like take some listen from the local and do something cool where you can kind of showcase other parts of the city.
Well, and I think too, not just Nashville, and I say this with love, but I think the NHL has to be mindful because the NHL needs to. I think that there is a vibe about the NHL. I think there is kind of a stereotype about hockey fans that runs a little parallel to lower broad. And I think the NHL would do well to showcase some things other than that as well. I think the NHL is a little behind the NFL and some other leagues in kind of expanding the generalization of the audience. I'm trying to say this really delicately, like, you know.
No, don't just go out and say it at this point.
Well, I feel like hockey fans are thought of as dumb drunks. And I think the NHL has an opportunity with an event like this to do more than give dumb drunks more than Lower Broad, more than Kid Rock, please. Like let's broaden our horizons for who really are hockey fans. I just feel like there's a stereotype to hockey fans that's not particularly flattering all the time. And it's a good chance for Nashville and the NHL to like do a little something, make it a little better, be mindful of your marketing.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of ready to see what the NHL does with it. And I'm excited to be in Nashville this time next June.
Next June. It's going to be incredible.
I feel like we're going to have some special locked-ons that week. Like I feel like we got to go all out with coverage on that.
I think we'll be busy.
I think we'll be busy too. Eric Dene, who was just on, this is going to be his Super Bowl. And if he doesn't get credentials this year, like I am rioting somebody.
We will sneak him in a bag. It will be a big bag, but we will sneak him in because Eric, can you imagine covering the draft with anybody else? It would be incredible.
Yeah. He's got to be the guy. He's definitely got to be the guy.
The guy.
Yeah. That's pulling the curtain back a little bit, but still. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. And in the meantime, where can the people find your work online?
You can find my work at ontheforecheck.com, and you can find me on Twitter at AnnK_Mama on Ice.
I'm Nick Morgan. You can find me at ontheforecheck.com. Find me on Twitter at _NS Morgan. While you're there, be sure to follow the podcast on Twitter at LO_Predators. And as always, if you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to like the video, subscribe, and leave a comment. Helps other Preds fans find this content better. And let us know what ideas you would have for the NHL Awards or NHL Draft. Because I feel like we didn't talk about the NHL Draft enough because everybody knows that's working just fine.
Yeah.
That's going to do it for us today on the Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We will be back Monday with all new episodes. See you then.